Welcome to DC Insiders, where we bring you sharp views about global issues with relevance to Taiwan from the political capital of the world here in Washington. I'm your host, Wenchi Yu. Today, our guest is Ambassador Craig Allen, who recently stepped down as the president of the U.S. China Business Council, an organization that plays a critical role for American businesses in China. He's now affiliated with the Asia Society. Welcome.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
So you just came back from China,
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So what did you hear on the ground?
So I was in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and Shanghai. And as a summary, I would posit that there's a significant amount of microeconomic uncertainty. In other words, companies that export to the U.S. or export anywhere are uncertain about their future.
Are they more optimistic or they're not really?
I think that the more labor-intensive operations are less optimistic. That's being really too high for them. The more capital or technology-intensive operations are probably doing quite well. But in contrast to the microeconomic uncertainty, I would say at the macroeconomic side, the government regulators, the bankers, and the economists are quite confident that they will be able to weather the storm and that overall that the Chinese economy will remain stable and keep growing at approximately a 4 to 5% rate. I would say that the Chinese government has done a good job at counter-cyclical stimulus, both monetary and fiscal. And at the same time, a number of Chinese companies like DeepSeek have really come out and impressed the world with new technology. And indeed, the recent listing of CATL on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange,
Which is the largest battery in energy storage.
the largest battery company in the world, and by far the most advanced.
So it sounds like some of the government measures may have had a positive impact.
Yeah, I would give them high marks on both fiscal and monetary stimulus. They have provided enough stimulus, but not too much, such that they're risking inflation. And indeed, they have a great deal of dry powder, if you will, in case the tensions or the conflict with the U.S. Continues to accelerate. The Chinese are ready for continued conflict if that is what is demanded of them.
So you were the president of U.S. China Business Council
Right.
during the first Trump trade war,
Yes.
right? So can you share how American businesses in particular navigated the trade war around that time?
Well, it was a very difficult period. Tariffs went from an average of 4 or 5% up to 20%. And that led to a loss of 245,000 jobs in America.
And this was based on surveys of American companies?
That's right. And many farmers lost their income during that period. So we saw a very negative impact of the tariffs, especially in the short term. Now, in the case of tariffs, over time, companies find workarounds and they're able to find new sources of supply or new markets. And so 245,000 job losses was the peak. And then it went down after that. And so it was a very difficult time for American companies in China, and of course Chinese companies that were exporting to the United States, or Chinese companies that had invested in America.
And this time around, why do you think Trump wanted to have more tariffs?
Well, if we look at the negotiating record, President Trump put on the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China in response to allegations that the three countries were facilitating the flow of the opioid fentanyl into the country. And when China retaliated, Trump doubled the tariffs. And then when China retaliated after the reciprocal tariffs, they were doubled and doubled again. And so at one point, we're back to approximately 40% tariffs on U.S. inbound and 30% tariffs on U.S. outbound. That's just during the 90 days.
So again, this agreement is really about the reciprocal tariff, which was imposed by the United States on April 2nd, and the escalatory steps which followed. Those on each side, the Chinese side and U.S. side, ended up at 125% on each other. The Chinese had additional non-tariff countermeasures. That has all come down by 115% to 10% each. The United States earlier this year imposed 20% related to fentanyl. That still exists. So if you're looking at Trump term 2, tariffs on China, right now effective, it's 30%.
But I think that we have to recall that is twice the amount that they were before the tariffs.
Yes.
So is this a small figure or a high figure? It depends on your point of reference. But it is leading to inflationary pressure in the United States, particularly in the consumer goods areas where Chinese companies, exporters, had previously been dominant. And it's going to take time to reconfigure supply chains to work this out, because many factories that were dependent on inputs, say supplies, materials, spare parts, packaging, chemicals, plastics, motors from China, are going to have to pay a lot more. And so it'll be very interesting to watch the degree to which American manufacturing, which relies on China for inputs, is affected and indeed might not be able to continue as a result of these tariffs.
Let's really focus on China because that's your expertise, and also I think that's where it's kind of indicative in terms of where Trump wants to lead this whole trade tariffs policy. President Trump actually said he wanted to have American companies, businesses have access to China's market, and that's his ultimate goal. But he also said he doesn't think it's likely. What does that mean?
Well, we need to look at the negotiating history. During the first Trump administration, there were very extensive 3 years of negotiations between the United States and China on the structural issues that impede foreign exports into the Chinese economy. And these would include industrial subsidies, intellectual property rights, state-owned enterprises, and things like that. And in fact, they came very close to an agreement. More than they came close to an agreement, they had an agreement that at the end of the day was vetoed by the Politburo in China, leading to a partial or phase 1 agreement, which had major purchases and some of the simpler regulatory adjustments.
This is a very important and remarkable occasion. Today we take a momentous step, one that has never been taken before with China, toward a future of fair and reciprocal trade as we sign phase 1 of the historic trade deal between the United States and China. Together we are righting the wrongs of the past and delivering a future of economic justice and security for American workers, farmers, and families. I want to thank President Xi, who is watching as we speak, and I'll be going over to China in the not too distant future to reciprocate.
So a lot of these negotiations have gone on, and both sides know each other extremely well. And indeed, you have the same configuration of negotiators between the phase 1 agreement and today. And so it's not difficult to carry on. However, at least in my view, it is significantly more difficult for the two countries to reach an agreement on these difficult structural issues.
The real structural issues.
Mostly because China has become a little bit more ideological, a little bit more nationalistic, a little bit more state-owned enterprise oriented. And so I think it was easier then, it's harder now. Still, they say that this is what they wish to do. So will they accept a small agreement, which would be tariffs and fentanyl, or will they accept a larger agreement, which might be tariffs and investment and perhaps purchases, or even a larger agreement than that to include technology and investment going both ways? And that is what we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, technology-related restrictions, including export controls of semiconductors, and those issues are of great concern to people in Taiwan as well. Tell us what you know about it.
In addition to the reciprocal tariffs, the White House has also ordered reviews, what we would call 232 reviews or national security reviews, on a number of other industrial segments, including mature semiconductors. And so a report is being written around the corner from here recommending whether or not tariffs are required for national security purposes. And I don't know what that report will say. It has not been published yet, but I would guess that it will recommend that there be tariffs put on mature node semiconductors, especially from China.
But that will affect Taiwan as well.
It could affect Taiwan because Taiwan companies are so deeply engaged in the Chinese semiconductor sector. But it's a very complex story because, of course, most of these mature node semiconductors are coming embedded in other equipment. And so how do you figure that out? And this is going to require a great deal of interesting negotiation.
Yeah. So you've been working with American businesses for so long. How are they preparing for Trump 2.0's tariffs policies?
Companies are very uncertain about where the tariffs will land. And that is making it very difficult for them to plan investments. It's making it very difficult for them to reconfigure supply chains. Many companies had taken a China plus one or a China plus two strategy.
What does that mean?
Well, while they have manufacturing in China, they also have manufacturing in Vietnam or Malaysia or Taiwan. But now, under the 232 tariffs, those other countries may also come under tariff pressure or not. And so the companies that had very cleverly protected themselves against tariffs against China find that there is no escape, there's no refuge from this, at least with certainty. In my view, however, it is unlikely that all of these tariffs are going to come into effect. They're too inflationary. They have too large an impact on American manufacturing, and so we'll have to wait and see.
I think the inflationary argument has been floated around for a while, right? And it doesn't seem that President Trump is affected at all. In fact, just talking about manufacturing products overseas, you see Apple originally, shifting their supply chain to India, and now basically Trump is saying it's also not okay. And it sounds like it is just not okay to manufacture overseas.
Right. Well, you are, of course, correct. However, the inflationary impact that we're going to see is real. And it affects low-income Americans most directly. Those are largely Trump voters. And therefore, I suspect that as the inflationary impact begins to accelerate, the president will notice. Much more important, however, so I agree with your point, much more important is the bond market. If inflation creeps up, then the U.S. is going to have a hard time selling its 10-year, 20-year, or 30-year bonds on an open market, and the price is going to go up.
I was watching the bond market. The bond market is very tricky. I was watching it, but if you look at it now, it's beautiful. The bond market right now is beautiful.
We are already seeing that. The average mortgage in the United States is about 7%. I just returned from Shanghai. The average mortgage in Shanghai is 2.6%. It's a big difference. And so President Trump, the U.S. government, the American government cannot afford to see a bond rate get out of control. And if it passes the 5% figure, then I think alarm bells might start ringing.
So almost everyone I spoke to has cautioned this. Why does the president do this?
Well, the president loves tariffs, and he always has. But they have not thought through the long-term consequences of the tariffs, particularly on the bond market. And within the government, there are different factions. There's a high tariff faction, which President Trump really has favored. And then there's the small budget, small government, reducing expenditures faction, which the president is learning about. And so what we have found since the reciprocal tariffs is that Peter Navarro, the head cheerleader, but he's the cheerleader for the tariffs, he's disappeared. And Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, has really emerged because they've realized that they have to sell some $9 trillion worth of bonds in the near future, and they don't want to sell those bonds at a higher price. And in order to ensure a lower price, they need to keep inflation under control. Now, overall inflation is not doing bad, and that's mostly due to the decrease in oil prices and energy prices. And so inflation is not trending up, but just wait and see. These tariffs are inherently inflationary.
So, foreseeing this potential impact, I'm sure a lot of companies also notice that. What have they been doing in terms of trying to influence this White House and lobbying, perhaps even Congress trying to do something?
Right. Companies are definitely lobbying, requesting exemptions of the tariff for their particular products. And they're doing that in Beijing and also in Washington.
In Beijing, what
They're
are they?
requesting exemptions for American exports to China.
So each company basically is trying to find their own exemption.
Don't tax you, don't tax me, tax the man behind that tree. In the case of American imports, the president has granted exemptions for a few goods, mostly in the ICT industry. And so companies are thinking, well, he did it for them, maybe he'll do it for us. And so companies largely are going through their congressional delegations to make formal requests that exemptions be put on. But the Trump administration is really loath to give out a lot of exemptions. They look at the exemptions that they gave out in Trump 1 as undermining their own policy and reducing the need for foreign companies to invest in manufacturing in the United States. And so, therefore, they really don't want to do it. And I think that, with the exception of ICT, that we'll see much fewer exemptions this time around.
Yeah, what is really interesting, and a company, again, of great interest to Taiwan is NVIDIA. Which, was heavily restricted and lost, according to their CEO, half of their markets in China. And this time around, it seems that after a few appearances in the White House with the president, Jensen Huang, their CEO, has been able to secure some tremendous exemptions, or at least suspension of restrictions. And now he's building a research center in Shanghai and openly talking about doing more. What does that really mean? I mean, is that for the entire sector? Can we look at that as a policy, or it's going to be just individually based?
So the President Trump has changed the AI policy. President Biden had tried to control the export of AI or the spread of AI through export controls on the AI-specific chips that is
Most
made
advanced,
by
designed by
NVIDIA.
NVIDIA.
That's
yes.
right. And there's been an adjustment of that policy. And so this opens the door for NVIDIA to open a second headquarters in Taiwan, as well as to potentially expand on mainland China. The one thing I would caution, however, is that I think that the officials within the Trump administration still wish to use access to these chips as a bargaining tool with other countries. So that hasn't changed. But they have rolled back the Biden-era policies and have not fully articulated their own
new policies. Yeah, that is the sense
I
I'm
would
getting.
expect that in the near term, though.
So you do expect to see something that is more consistent, more comprehensive?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. AI is very difficult to regulate, and these chips are difficult to regulate. And I think that the Chinese manufacturing we have underestimated enormously, and the chips coming out of Huawei facilities in China are advancing much faster than we had expected. And so that changes the dynamic as well, because if you could purchase a Huawei chip or NVIDIA chip and they have roughly the same capabilities, the Huawei chip will probably be a lot easier to purchase. So that does impact their thinking as well.
Yeah, that will also change the U.S. negotiation tactics, probably.
That is correct.
Do you think U.S. and China will eventually reach some kind of equilibrium? And what will that look like?
Well, the way I look at it, there are four potential scenarios. The first possible scenario is that we have a vicious cycle down with expanding controls. This could move to financial sector controls, visa controls.
But it sounds like they're rational, reasonable enough to pause that
so
escalation.
I would say that is a possible scenario. A second scenario is a dirty equilibrium, well, like where we are right now, where there's a response and challenge, response and challenge, response and challenge. The third scenario that I would see is a small deal, a deal with regard to purchases and tariffs, fentanyl, like phase one.
Yeah.
And the fourth scenario would be a larger deal, like the original agreement, and potentially including other issues such as North Korea, Ukraine. Certainly the Chinese will bring up Taiwan. And I think that I would assign each of those four very different scenarios roughly a 25% chance each.
Okay.
And I know that that's very unsatisfying, but it just proves that I have no idea. And I suspect that no one in the government, in either government, has any idea exactly how this will end up. But Wenchi, you are correct. If they are rational and are working in the interest of both the American and the Chinese citizens, they're going to reach some form of a deal.
It just depends on what the substance of the deal is.
Now we've made a deal with United Kingdom. We've made a deal with China. We've made a deal. We're close to making a deal with India. Others we met with, and we don't think we're going to be able to make a deal. So we just send them a letter. If you want to play ball, you have to. This is what you have to pay.
The President will also sign an executive order today delaying the July 9th deadline to August 1st. So the reciprocal tariff rate or these new rates that will be provided in this correspondence to these foreign leaders will be going out the door within the next month, or deals will be made.
Since we're living in this uncertain time, what would be your advice to Taiwan?
My advice to Taiwan is to keep doing what Taiwan is doing. Taiwan is one of the freest and most vibrant economies in all of Asia. Taiwan is a remarkable place with tremendous companies, tremendous entrepreneurs, tremendous technologies, and beautiful food. So I would recommend Taiwan be confident, move forward directly. The White House is looking for an increase in military spending. I think that that's reasonable given Taiwan's security situation. And that I would expect that with a confident, strong Taiwan looking to the future, that the status quo will hold for a long time and that we have nothing to worry about because it's in no one's interest for there to be a violent or a kinetic conflict across the Taiwan Straits that is to be avoided almost no matter what. And we know how to do this. Taiwan has thrived for 70 years, and I expect Taiwan will continue to thrive for the next 70 years.
Well, let's really hope you're right. There's a lot of anxiety around.
I would say Taiwan has many friends in Washington, and more than the executive branch, the legislative branch, the Congress is full of friends of Taiwan. And indeed, there are dozens, perhaps even hundreds of congressmen who feel it's their special duty to watch out for Taiwan. Never underestimate Taiwan's strength in the Washington policy scene.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your optimism. I know you're not feeling well today, so extra appreciation for coming and joining us.
My tremendous pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for watching DC Insiders. Please follow us on social media to get the latest episode. See you next time.